All right, everybody. Welcome to the Contextual Christian Church Bible Study, where today we're going to read Esther chapter 8, verses 3 to 17. I'm going to pray it in. Everybody bow your heads. Father, thank you for getting us all on this Bible study as we're still continuing through the Bible, well, through Esther's story, basically. Um, what we're going to get into now, I pray that it more details into other children of Israel, separate from Mordecai, separate from Esther. Something new we can get into, some new lessons we can get into. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, so last time what we had gotten into, we had done chapter 7 and got a little bit into chapter 8, two verses into chapter 8. But what we had gotten through is, long story short, Haman, who's second to the king, had felt disrespected by Mordecai, who was one of the children of Israel and also second cousin to the queen. And so Haman had set up to he was trying to get all the children of Israel killed and deceive the king by just saying it was a certain group of people that weren't following rather than specifying the children of Israel. And so the king signed a decree. And long story short, as we got to this point from yesterday, we had it where Esther, the queen, had set up a banquet where she was about to explain everything to the king to try to get her people saved. And so, in the grand scheme of everything, it could all be broken down to this: everything that Haman wanted to have done against Mordecai got done against Haman instead. And every blessing that Haman would want to have done to him, because he thought the king was trying to honor him, it ended up getting done to Mordecai. And the same way how Haman had deceived the king by leaving out important information, he ended up getting hanged on the very gallows or very hanging area that he was trying to have set up for Mordecai, and ended up having done to him because when he was trying to plead his case with the queen, he fell on her, and the king saw him, thinking he was trying to intimately attack the queen. So it was just an interesting side note point. Long story short, everything failed for Haman, and Mordecai ended up being blessed. And all this stemmed back from when Haman was walking through, and Mordecai refused to bow down in reverence or worship of him. And that's where we finished up, was in verse 2 of chapter 8. And this was where Haman, everything that Haman owned, was transferred over to ownership of Mordecai instead, after Haman had already been killed from being hung. And so now we'll continue from there, as I'll go ahead and switch it to our first section so our first reader can read. Go ahead, Charles, when you're ready.
Next one, I'll be reading Esther chapter 8, verses 3 to 7. I'm going to give it a couple seconds. Verse 3. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king. Give me a second. And said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seemed right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha. Or let me try that again. Hammedatha. Oh, that is Hammedatha. Of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews, which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hands upon the Jews. So Esther's talking to the king, you know, like on hands and knees, like when women are begging, but she's coming to the king, pleading with tears, sorrowful. We're not gonna bring this golden scepter up. Esther's pleading with this sorrowful, tearful emotion. Um, Also, because we already got done with Haman, can you reverse, in other words, reverse what Haman and you had already set up about killing the Jews? Instead of killing the Jews, let's take that back. So we're not killing the Jews in all these different areas that you run. And I need to bring up one more thing. The king just responds to Esther and Mordecai. He starts off by saying, I've given the house of Haman to Esther, the same guy we hung, because he had put his hands on the Jews. And it sounds like he's going to continue more after verse 7. Yeah, that's all I got to say for this. Like, just a simple, like, the simplest I can do.
Good. Now, one thing I would point out about verse 7, what is he starting off doing in verse 7?
Um,
Charles?
um, let me read. Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hands upon the Jews. So there's a I'm trying to get it out. I can't get it out right now. Explaining on what he's starting on, the way he started talking to Esther and Mordecai, how he's doing it. Um,
All right. The way that he's going about doing this, he's starting off by bringing up something he's already done. Esther, I already gave you and Mordecai Haman's house, and Haman has been hung. All that because he laid his hand upon the Jews. In a situation like that, what is he trying to do? Because he's not doing this now. He's telling her something he already did. We read about that in the last chapter. So then why bring up what he already did? Thomas?
Kind of like reassuring them that they're gonna be all right. He's not gonna like take any
Good.
measures
Exactly.
according to the decree.
Exactly. He's reassuring her, Charles. Like you're sitting here, like, I just killed this dude and I gave you all this stuff. You shouldn't even be worried about this. But on her side, it's understandable why she would be afraid, right, Charles? Yeah, you killed
right,
the guy and everything, but that doesn't mean that everything's been reversed.
right. Because the letter was already sent to all the lands that he rules, that the king rules over already. So
Exactly. And to top it off, the fact that it even got signed by the king, that also goes to show how little investment he is into his job as king. So even though he's done this, you could see from both sides why she would be freaking out and also why he would be sitting here comforting her. But from her perspective, why are you sitting here trying to comfort her saying that you've already done this? What does that have to do with actually sending out the information that it's already been canceled? That there is no plan to kill the Jews anymore. So though it sounds good for reassurance, It's not actually responding to the actual question. It's kind of like if I told you, bringing up something from the past, Charles. Um, if I told you that, hey, uh, what would be a good example? Um,
Use the one you just used earlier with the dispatcher thing.
yeah, with the dispatcher. Oh yeah, I'll give you all the information. We've had so many times with dispatchers that they give us the information to be able to make it to the pickup, but they haven't given us the pickup information. They've told us the location, but we need the pickup numbers to be able to pick up the information. We need to have all the information. Oh yeah, I've sent you the information. You have the information. Yeah, do I have some information? Yeah. But I don't have the information I actually need, like the pickup numbers and stuff like that. So it's like you're not actually responding to the actual problem. But we'll see how it continues from here. Now, does anybody have any comments, questions as we go to the second section? Now would be the time to raise your hands. All right. Then I'll go ahead and read Esther chapter 8, verse 8 through 12. I'll give everybody a second. All right. Verse 8. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed for the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the third month, that is, the month Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and the deputies, and rulers of the provinces, which are from India unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing, and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, 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 wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and provinces that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey, upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. All right, so a couple things here. First and foremost, as we can see, the whole comforting, it wasn't with empty words. It was more so like a preparation. Look, I've already given you everything. I've given you everything of Haman's. I also had Haman hanged where Mordecai was supposed to be hanged. So go ahead, write of this as a new decree for all the Jews, and to seal it with the king's ring. So in other words, he's getting backing to Mordecai to literally reverse, not just reverse in the essence of cancel the kill order of the Jews, but to give the order so that the Jews could kill the people that were trying to have them killed. And not only to have the people that were against the Jews to be killed, but also all of their stuff they owned for the Jews to own it, to gain it as their own property. And then to point it out, as he sent the letters by post, on horseback, and riders of mules, camels, and young dromedaries. Now, because we don't know what dromedaries normally is, as that's not a word we normally use, we definitely got to look that up. And so, dromedaries is a brood mare. Oh, the horse.
Female horse.
Yep, female horse. So they're basically just getting it with all possible ways to get it out there, to make sure this information goes out to everyone who needs to see it. And ironically, it's in the same exact format that all of this would happen in one day. So, in the same type of thing, in one day, they would have killed all the Jewish folk. It's reversed to kill and take ownership of everything from the ones that would have killed the Jewish folk. So, they're about to be blessed by the enactment of this as well. Which goes to show that point. Imagine if Esther hadn't actually gone to talk to the king. Imagine if Mordecai hadn't stood up for what was right. Imagine if they had just gone with the flow instead of doing their part. They'd have been killed. They might have been put to death themselves, let alone everybody else throughout the kingdom. So we do have that communication going out and everything reversed in its entirety. Now, does anybody have any comments or questions about the second section as we go to the final section? Now would be the time to raise your hands. All right, then go ahead, Charles, and finish this out with the Bible study portion. I mean,
All right, I'll be reading Esther chapter 8, verses 13 to 17. Verse 13. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the posts that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment. And the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. I'm gonna get back to that in a minute. Starting off, so this commandment is sent out to all the different provinces, all different areas where all the Jews are at. I'll just leave it at that. It went to all the different places. But Mordecai, no, I don't even need to bring it. No, I have to. Because it went out of his way to bring up Mordecai leaving in all this royal garment, the blue, the white, the great crown of gold, fine linen with the purple, and that the Jews were all glad and happy and full of they did just excited. Of course they were because of the new commandment that the king put out. Defend yourself. Yay! There's a feast out. They're happy, doing their thing. Now, the end of verse 17, I don't want to overthink this. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. I don't want to overthink this. What that just says is when you become a Jew, we have to go back to the things we've been listening to in Deuteronomy and all that. They would be technically the stranger, but you got to follow God's will and God's way. You got to get circumcised. You got to do all these things. But you're basically trying to follow the one true God and do what the Jews are doing. In other words,
Yep.
being like the Jews, in other words.
Or more simply put, they converted to Judaism.
Which is funny because I was going to bring up an interesting point that what you on your section, the king is basically doing what America's Second Amendment. That you're just basically giving a Second Amendment to defend yourself. And then I was going to bring up, well, that could start issues, conflicts between the Jews and no. My last section, they want to join the Jews. So you don't have that conflict between the Jews and everybody else. Jews defending themselves. People want to join them. I wish America was
Exactly.
like that.
Well, I don't
Oh,
know.
but
I mean, shoot. I mean, with what happened recently, you're starting to get a lot of there's a lot of videos going on, a lot of things where people are like there are people that like there's videos of people being thrown into fountains now. They're starting to get some fighting that's going on where conservatives are starting to defend themselves now. They're not standing
nice.
quiet as much as they were before. And that's just recently. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, at one side of it, there's still a bunch of people that like, and they literally are still lying about things on the Democrat side. But you are starting to get a little bit more of self-defense coming on the right side.
Which is
So,
interesting because the right side is the one that promoting that's part of the thing that want to preserve in America is your right to defend yourself. It's about time that you start defending yourself.
well, and it's sad that it took the death of Charlie Kirk for it to actually get to that point.
Right.
But it goes to show that, I mean, even with the Jewish folk here and what we're reading, sometimes it takes the threat of death for people to be willing to finally stand up for what's right. And who knows what the future holds? Who knows if they're just going to back down later on? I mean, you got people in a bunch of false churches who are sitting there saying, "No, we need to be a time of calming down and temperance, and we need to like piece things out." You can't piece things out when one side literally wants to kill you and you're sitting here trying to be peaceable. That's not how this works. That's not how it works or ever has worked. Even as what we're reading here today with in Esther. When one side is trying to piece things out, if you just let things go, if Mordecai would have just let it go, he'd be dead. Esther would be dead. If everything was just let go, they'd be dead. You have to stand up for yourself in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just speaking out against what's wrong. You can't just go with the flow when one side wants you dead and they don't want the actual discussion and they don't want any accountability. That's not how righteousness works and that's not how peace works. And so it's ironic the timing of how everything is panning out in America today and what we're reading today as well. It's a very similar situation in that aspect. Now then, does anybody have any comments or questions before we pray out the Bible study portion? Now would be the time to raise your hands. All right, then I'll go ahead and pray us out from the Bible study portion. Everybody bow your heads. Father, thank you for this time you've given us to be able to read your word and to be able to understand more. We're also grateful because of the parallels that we see from this time with Mordecai and with the children of Israel and the enemies around them, as much as we see with America today and conservatives. Yeah, we are supposed to be men of peace whenever possible. But just as much as we see here and what you had set up for them, as well as what we see today, there are times when peace is not possible. There are times where comfortability is not an acceptable thing. And if we are to be men of righteousness and followers, we give grace when grace is possible. We turn the other cheek when turning the other cheek is possible. But when it's time that there's not, we have to stand up for what's right, or we're not men of righteousness. There's a reason why you told the apostles when they go out to preach that if they don't have a sword, to sell their own cloak and make sure they buy a sword. If we are solely supposed to turn our cheek and never defend ourselves, then there would be no reason to buy a sword. But you literally told them to sell their cloak if they didn't have a sword. And so we see that from today in our reading and today in reality and what's going on and the necessity for defense of ourselves and defense of others. And I just pray that we can take these lessons and stand firm on the truth as we do in this church and not allow small things to get in the way, but at the same time, not to pretend that the big things are not happening and not necessary. In your son's holy and precious name, Jesus Christ Yeshua. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Now, as towards tonight's Bible listening, tonight's listening is Judges chapter 14 to Ruth chapter 4. Again, Judges chapter 14 to Ruth chapter 4. Let me know when you got it.
Got it.
I got it.
All right. Now, last night's listening was Judges chapter 3 to 13. And Thomas, were you able to finish that?
Yeah, but let me go second.
All right. Then Charles, go ahead and go first. And then Thomas will go second, and then I'll go last. I
Okay.
only have one anyway, so you're probably gonna take the one I had.
Judges chapter 4. Is that the one you had?
Nope.
Okay, good. Because I didn't really write the verse down. So, Judges chapter 4, I want to just break this down. This basically debunks any woman that says, oh, well, there wasn't any important women. One. Two, the women were treated like absolute crap. Three,
Yep. We're second class
women were
citizens.
slaves. They were anything. Anytime a girl or a woman, a lady, whoever is saying all these things about, oh, well, women were this and that in the Bible. Judges chapter 4, Deborah the prophetess, and we can go through the whole chapter. Deny it all you want after, but at least let me tell you about Judges chapter 4 before you just start assuming, especially when you haven't went and did real Bible studies.
And not only that, but it goes into the point about how women are not allowed to teach in the church. They're not allowed to be teachers or in authority over man. Being a prophetess does not mean you're in authority over man. Being a prophetess does not mean you're teaching in the church. A prophetess, much like a prophet, is someone who gets visions from God, who's able to speak for God in that aspect. But if you're a prophet, even on the men's side, you're not a teacher in the church. It's a different position. A prophet is someone who God speaks through, and that's the bottom line. So that doesn't mean that just because there's a prophetess, that, oh, women can teach and preach in the church. No, we're talking about two different positions. So in the New Testament, where it talks about saying, I suffer a woman not to teach or preach in the church, but to stay silent and learn at home from her husband, that can still be true even though there's a prophetess. There are different things that women are allowed to do and capable of doing, both, and there are things that they're not allowed to do or incapable of doing, and for different reasons. And sometimes it's physical capability, sometimes it's authority capability. Just because you're physically capable of doing something does not mean it's acceptable to do. But yeah, they weren't treated as second class citizens. They weren't just treated as property. There was just things they could do and things they couldn't do. And for the things they could do, we have literally a writing of a prophetess, female prophet. That's pretty big deal. So yeah, exactly, Charles. All right, go ahead with your second one.
The other one I wanted to bring up, this goes back to what I had brought up yesterday with the children of it. This was Judges chapter 3, verses 5 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
The children of Israel, staying and up dwelling in other nations, worshiping other gods, and God is selling them to or sold them to the king of Mesopotamia, and they ended up serving there for 8 years. Part of the reason why I started that was it probably is more, not that much more. I wrote down 6 times in this listening that the children of Israel stopped serving God.
Yep.
And it was only a couple chapters. It wasn't like we went from numbers to like kings.
Yep.
6 times, and I guarantee you there's probably like one or two I missed.
All right. And do you have a third one?
Um, yeah, but I'm gonna try to summarize this one. Judges chapter 6. It's 15 to 24, but I really only want to bring up verses 20 to 23. And this is Gideon talking at this point, with God and the angel, of
All right.
course, that I'm about to bring up. And the angel of God said unto him, take the flesh of the unleavened cakes and lay them upon. This is, oh yeah, I need to add this before I finish reading. This is when Gideon is like, he's as in, I need to verify. I'm still talking to the one true God. Okay, cool. Here's your verification. The angel's about to tell you this right now. Take the flesh of the unleavened cakes and lay them upon this rock and pour out the broth. Gideon did that. He did so. Then the angel of the Lord put forth the end of the staff that was in his hand and touched the flesh of the unleavened
Hold
cakes.
on. One thing I have to correct you on. You said it's so he could know he's still talking to the one true God. That's not why.
Let me go back. Because he was chosen. He didn't want to save
Mm-hmm.
Israel. Talking about why am I the one chosen? Family's poor. Least of my father's house.
Mm-hmm.
God said, I'll be with you. You're going to destroy the Midianites. Oh, no, sorry. In verse 17, he asked to show a sign. Verse 17, and he said unto him, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then show me a sign that thou talkest with me.
Exactly. So
I'm reading after
he
Gideon's
wants a
asking for
sign
a
that this
sign.
is actually happening. That it's not
Right.
just something in his head. Does that make so you see what I'm saying? So he's not saying
Yeah.
like it's actually God. No, 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 no. He wants a sign that this is actually happening. I'll give
Right.
you a perfect example. You can have a feeling that God is really working through you. But if you want to, this is why I talked about with prayers. We see this all the time. God, give me a sign that I'm actually in the right path with you.
You correct me on this years ago because
Exactly.
it wasn't
Praying
specific at
these
all.
vague prayers, and God does answer, don't get me wrong. But you don't understand the answer because you made it too vague. Like, God doesn't always speak with literal words to us. And when we ask for it, if we're because the only ones that God spoke to with literal words were people that were so closely following him that they were called into that level that they literally heard his actual words. Like Moses was able to hear the words from God. Aaron, when we talk about like Joshua, but then we look at the servant of Abraham. He didn't hear God's words. He had a scenario play out. So not everybody was able to hear the words directly from God. Even when Samuel, when he heard God's words, he went to Eli. Eli hadn't heard the words of God at that moment.
You still there?
And give me some sign to show that this is actually
Oh, there you
happening
are.
and it's not just in my head.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, y'all. It just had cut off on my end. My bad.
It cut off for me too.
Okay, so long story short,
It cut off again.
that God is
That was
actually talking
super
with him.
short.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, no, I got that was the story with Eli being blind and Samuel was like, I keep hearing him the first time, the
Yeah,
second time.
exactly.
So yeah, that was my bad then. So Gideon is doing well. What did I just read in 17? Show me the sign. And I was reading out what the angel of God was, angel of God was telling Gideon to do this, do that. And with the angel of God lighting the things that I talked about, lighting it on fire, and there was this big fire. And Gideon was like, "Oh yeah, that was my sign." Yep, that's it.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, those are the three I wanted to bring up. I didn't really have too much going on with this one.
All right, good. Now, Thomas, what stuck out to you?
I got it.
And speak louder into the mic. You barely hear you. Sound far away.
How about now?
That's better.
Judges chapter 7, verses 20 through 21. And it says, and the three companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers and held the lamps in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands to blow withal. And they cried, the sword of the Lord of Gideon, and they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. So here we have this army of 300 straight bullying Gideon, bro, to the point they crying and running off because the battle belonged to the Lord in the first place. God can work. God don't need a lot of people. He can work with five and still kill a whole army off. That's how powerful our God is. So that's what we
Yeah,
have here.
good.
That's one.
All right, what's your second one?
One sec. Man, I wanted to get into Samson a little bit more, but it's not in this section. But Judges 13:24 through 25. And the woman bare a son and called his name Samson. And a child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move him at times in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Es, es I can't pronounce that. Estella. I don't know. But
Close. Spell it out.
S Taul.
Well, no, spell it
Taul.
out. Like how do the letters go?
Oh, Eshtaol.
All right, so Aesh. That'd be the Esh, right?
Eshtaol.
There you go. And
Eshtaol.
what was the what? It's Tol.
Oh, Taol. Taol.
There you go. Eshtaol. But if you say it
Eshtaol.
quickly, Eshtaol. Eshtaol.
Eshtaol. Okay,
Good.
so I kind of was just listening today and kind of like accidentally listened to 3 or 4 more chapters extra. So I got into Sense, but I realized I was like, oh, I didn't pass where I was supposed to stop today. Um,
Oh, so the part you wanted to bring up is not in our section. for
Yeah,
today, for
but still, this
tomorrow.
is good though. We have him being born, and God has that spirit of the Lord begins to move within him. So that's also good to know as well. That
Hmm.
he's working for God.
Good. One thing about your section that we could definitely bring up is also about the fact that why was God's spirit so with this son? Why was he so much with him? Do you remember?
Uh, hold on. Oh yeah. To deliver Israel from the Philistines, right?
No. Like there was a more direct reason. Charles, why was God's spirit so heavily with Samson?
Wasn't this the does it have something to reference with the Nazarite pledge or no?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's what it sounds like. This is the kid with the Nazarite
the
kid.
Nazarite pledge. So he had a pledge to be a Nazarite. Now, Nazarite, so this goes to show again that point that there are levels to this. There are people that follow God just on a base level, but the more invested in following the ways of God, the more involved he was in their lives. So with Samson, this whole promise of him being born to this woman that he would be a Nazarite. He wouldn't drink any strong drink or wine or anything of that. He wouldn't eat anything unclean, and he wouldn't have his hair cut. He would follow the Nazarite pledge. And that's the direct reason. Now, as a whole, indirectly, yeah, like we know the story of Samson from listening the last three times. He's definitely used to save the children of Israel. However, that's the indirect way. That's the God planning way. But the more direct way is the fact that he was a Nazarite. He was in that Nazarite pledge. All right, good. And did you have a third, Thomas, you wanted to bring up?
I don't.
All right. I'm surprised neither one of you brought up the one that I'm glad you didn't because I was like, I only had one that really stood out to me. Judges chapter 9, verse 52 to 54. All right. And Abimelech came unto the tower and fought against it and went hard unto the door of the tower to burn it with fire. And a certain woman cast a piece of a millstone upon Abimelech's head and all to break his skull. Then he called hastily unto the young man his armor bearer and said unto him, draw thy sword and slay me, that men say not of me, a woman slew him. And his young man thrust him through and he died. This will always stick out to me every time we go through this, both of these situations, because it happens twice. One for this, one for like the uncircumcised. But here, like he cared so much about his image and his namesake, as we saw from him being like that was a big thing to him. His reputation. He cared so much about his reputation that even in his death, after his skull got broken by this woman throwing a millstone, a stone meant for crushing things with a ball in it so that they could mix things. He cared so much about his reputation that he didn't want nobody to be able to hear that he was killed by a woman. So after his skull got broken, he had a young man kill him by stabbing him through. Now, the funny part about this too is he might have survived. After your head got like broken, if you have enough forethought to have somebody tell somebody to draw the sword and stab you, you literally guaranteed a death that was not necessarily guaranteed. But because he was so focused on the reputation, he guaranteed his own death. Which is crazy. Oh man, and this was
I'm
literally
so
because. Oh, go ahead,
I'm so
Charles.
mad I'm so mad I missed this. I didn't mean to cut you off. How I probably because I was tired when I was doing the listening. I'm mad that I even missed this in the first place. It's saved on the app. Like the actual app you told us to download. I have it
Yeah.
as a like it's highlighted and everything. I'm mad that I missed it.
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised it didn't stand out to y'all. I was like, this type of thing happened twice, but that was one of them. But anyways, do you guys have anything else you want to add or say before we close it out? All right, then I'll go ahead and close it out. Have a good night, y'all.